Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of A Happy Moment. My name is Dan. I'm glad to have all of you with me today. And today I have a very special guest with me from the Discount Horror Show YouTube channel. Please welcome DHS, also known as Turbo. Hey,
Hi.
Turbo.
Hi. Happy to be here.
I'm glad to have you with me today. And this is going to be a very fun episode because we are going to be talking all about horror movies. And if anyone out there listening is looking for some horror recommendations, you don't want to miss this episode. Uh, Turbo, would you like to just give us a little bit of a background on yourself and when you first got interested in horror movies?
Okay. Well, I would say that I accidentally got into horror movies. Um, in a lot of ways, probably some of my favorite and first were Phantom of the Opera because of musicals and stuff. I had a love of musicals, and I realized that there was the Phantom of the Opera, and then once that was discovered, it like opened up that entire world to me. And then Mystery Science Theater, of course. About me, let's see. I have been sewing since I was like since I could walk, it feels like. And I love books and all sorts of artwork and various creative things, and then of course horror and frugalness in horror. So yeah.
All right, very cool. And we're going to be taking a look at each decade and talking about some of our favorite horror movies. And for those of you who are regular listeners, a lot of the movies I mentioned you've probably already heard of, but I have a feeling that Turbo's list is going to be a bit more robust than mine. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Uh, Turbo, um, my list doesn't start until we get to the 1920s, but yours starts a little bit sooner than that. Yours dates back to the 1890s, right?
Yeah, 1890. Yeah, I found
Would you like
some,
to
and
tell
I,
us a little bit about?
of course, yeah. So in the 1890s, it was the beginning of film and the beginning of horror too. Well, horror movies, and they had the Vanishing Lady and the Cavalier's Dream, and but like one that I really liked was the Cavalier's Dream because it had a whole scene and it was like transforming, and Mephistopheles was in it, and to see some effects that were around in the 1800s that are still being used basically today is just phenomenal to me. You don't have to really enjoy the movie as much in plot ways, but in just the visuals, it's phenomenal in my opinion. So
And those movies back in the 1890s, they were generally only like what, a few minutes long.
hmm yeah, I think the longest was 15 minutes. I didn't write down run times. I actually have a few more now that I realize it. My things all scattered about, but yeah. Actually, like, there's the first horror movie is The House of the Devil from 1986. Um, and then there's like The Haunted Castle, which is a 19 and no, sorry, an 1897 French film. It's a remake of the film. So they both have editing, and the everything's kind of a little harder to see because it's not as restored as it should be. That's what I, hope. But yeah, sorry, I get
Oh,
excited.
you're fine. And are those available anywhere online that people can check out?
Yeah, they're all over the place. If you just type in their little names, you can find them. They're pretty easy to find because there's no, as far as I can tell, don't quote me on that, but there is no rights or copyright holder on any of them because they're very much public domain, which is very neat.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was that first one you mentioned? The Cavalier.
The Vanishing Lady and then the Cavalier's Dream.
Oh, okay. All right. Cool. How about moving into 1900s? What have you got there?
Oh gosh. Oh gosh, I missed one. Devil in a Covenant, 1899. I'm gonna keep messing that up. Um, but I have The Legend of a Ghost, and it's from 1908, and it's an absolutely bizarre visual movie. I cannot believe that it was created. To be honest, I feel like this movie should be everywhere level of excitement. And I think it was 10 minutes, 10 to 15. And I cannot believe what they could do. I cannot believe it, to be honest. We have so many indie filmmakers nowadays, and you're like, oh, just use these techniques.
What's that one about?
From what I remember, it was like this guy like wandering around and he lost his wife, and then she's um coming to like haunt him, or like he's trying to haunt her. It they all I'm so bad at this. They all kind of like run together. Um because like I can't really talk about what its plot is when it was so distracting to watch. I can Have you ever seen like a music video that makes zero sense and you're just sitting there and you're like, whose mind put this together as everything swirls? And
Yes.
yeah, it's kind of like that is my best way to describe the plot,
Okay.
because there's ghosts and all this fun stuff.
Were those older movies? Did they even have music yet in those?
No, they had sheet music sometimes that survived. From what I remember, this one had public domain songs mixed in. So you'll have almost really religious church music playing over a very dark subject matter. Because people just put on whatever they can. And it cracked me up, and it kind of took me out of the movie here and there, because you're sitting there and you're like, why, why are we singing Joyful, Joyful?
It just seemed like an odd match, but
Yeah, agreed.
all right. How about going into the 1910s?
1910. I have the Hunchback of Notre Dame, I always, and the Queen of Spades, which is a Soviet movie. Old, really old. The interesting thing about, I wanted to say, like, the interesting thing about any of these foreign silent movies is you can still understand them because they're silent. And like even the title cards, you can just pull up Google Translate and you're good to go. So that's fun.
Now, at that point, are we getting to more of like I guess, normal movie length of like getting up to like an hour or an hour and a half? Or
Mm-mm.
are they still just
No,
like
no.
10-15 minutes?
You can find some that are in the 37 to like 40-minute range. Um, and in some scenarios, I don't know if some of the film's been missing, and nor do I know if anybody's film's been missing um, from them. So I stuck to a little bit of shorter ones because it's what I can get for free. And
Right.
so I'm not 100% sure, but those two are shorter because I'm picky. The Hunchback might be a little bit longer, though. It's been a while. It's been a very long time.
Okay. Uh, Now let's go up to the 1920s, and I can finally contribute something here.
Yay! Thank you. 'Cause
Yay!
I was like,
Uh,
where are you? Come to me.
Also, a couple of my favorite movies from the 1920s. Of course, Nosferatu.
Yeah,
Um, very very creepy vampire in that movie.
agreed.
Uh, and also, The Phantom of the Opera with Lon
Yes.
Chaney. That's such a good one. Probably my favorite version of Phantom of the Opera.
Mhm.
What have you got, Turbo?
No, I'm just so excited. I'm sorry if I interject. I get really
Oh no.
excited. I have actually Genuine Tragedy of a Vampire, which is again one of those movies. I get so drawn in by stunning visuals that often the plot can get lost on me. But I remember sitting there just watching and doodling and loving it. It's one of like it's another one of the first odd vampire movies, and um, unfortunately, in the 1920s, I typically do trigger warnings and stuff. Is that there can be some racist tropes in these old ones. Unfortunately, it's not okay, but it comes with the time. I have actually the Phantom, of course, and then I have the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Um, which I don't. Have you seen that? Do you like that one?
No, it's been on my list of movies I want to see, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet.
Okay, I need to make a recommendation to you and anyone that may be listening. If you're going to watch this movie, make sure that it's the Kino version, the Kino Lorber version. They have restored it in a way that you'd think it was filmed 20 years ago. It is so beautiful. There's only like one or two scenes where the quality isn't that great, but it is so good, and I think that's the way it should be seen because it's a beautiful film. It's creepy. It deals a lot with mental illness. It's beautiful. And then I have Waxworks, but I always toss in a wax movie because I have an obsession with it, with House of Wax and wax stuff. So.
Oh yeah, the first House of Wax movie that came out in the 20s, didn't it? I think.
Mm-hmm. One of the first ones,
Okay.
yeah, like what's inspired the House of Wax, yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Very cool. I'm definitely gonna revisit this episode later and make a list of all the cool horror movies that you talk about, so I
Thank
can go
you.
check those out.
I
Uh,
can always send you the list and then it can be easier for people.
oh yeah, that'd be perfect. Then I can post that in the episode description too, so for easy reference. Awesome.
Perfect.
And then, what have you got for the 1930s?
Um, it's like it was Todd Browning's era film, so I have Dracula and I have Freaks, which I absolutely adore. I know it's complicated, but I adore it. And then Mystery of the Wax Museum, and of course, The Bride of Frankenstein, which I saw you did an episode on recently. So.
Yes. Yeah, and that's actually what I have on my list for the 30s, The Bride of Frankenstein.
Yes,
It's a very well done movie, I think,
it's
and
beautiful.
I'd say I'd probably list it above the original. Would you?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I was worried. I was
Yeah,
like, oh
when
no, because I always feel like that could be controversial, but it's so good. The first one does deal with humanity, but that one really touches on the base of humanity and just the core of the bride. I love her. I love Elsa, so.
yeah, yeah, she was great in that movie. Um, it's, I just like that hair that she has, and
It's
it's
amazing.
like because you got one moment you see her like all wrapped up like a mummy, and then the next minute you see her and like she has this like hair. Like
It's like, how did you get all of that in there? How do it work, ma'am?
Although I wonder if like maybe if they attached it to her afterwards. Do you
Oh, they
think? And
could
they just
have.
didn't show that.
They
Yeah.
could have. Or to wonder hair cure. You had a wonder like elixir for hair. Oh.
um. Well, so now we go into the 1940s. Terrible for the 1940s. I've got the Wolfman.
Hmm.
Just a very iconic werewolf movie, and also my favorite Boris Karloff movie, The Body Snatcher. Uh, I love that movie. I think it's really great. His best role, in my opinion. What do you think of the 40s?
Uh, the 40s I struggled the most with, actually, which feels so mean. Um, I just had the 1940s Phantom of the Opera, which is, I believe, with Nelson Eddy. And I don't even know if I could technically call that horror. Um, I think I have a partial vendetta against that movie, actually, in some aspects. Um, but apparently there was a huge censorship problem going on during the 1940s, so a lot of horror movies got scaled back or weren't allowed to be made or this or that. They had to go through like strict censorship problems and so, but I
Oh,
agree, Wolfman and Body Snatchers is great ones to have, and I did not add them, and now I'm like, whoops. Look at you. You did extra homework there.
well, I mean, we're getting into this period where there's like so many great horror movies being made, and uh,
Hmm.
I'm sure there's probably a few that I should have had on my list that I forgot about. But
Right.
it's easy to miss some. There's just like so much great stuff. Did you have anything else on the 40s?
No.
Okay.
Embarrassingly so, no. So anybody can tell me, please tell me your favorite ones from the 40s, please. Redeem them for me.
All right, Turbo, what you got for the 50s?
The 50s? Okay, so the 50s for me is the era of Vincent Price. It's the House of Wax, the Tingler. I picked that one over the House on Haunted Hill, The Fly, Teenagers from Outer Space, which might not count as horror, but I feel like that sci-fi line was a little bit vague back then, and Attack of the Giant Leeches because I love leeches. I do.
Very nice. Uh, so I've got House on Haunted Hill.
Yes.
That's my favorite Vincent Price movie, and
Really?
yeah, that
That's
surprises you.
interesting. No. I like hearing people's favorite Vincent Price movies. So it always fascinates me because it gives me insight into your you can tell a lot by somebody's favorite Vincent Price movie. Because The
I
House of
mean, it's
Wax is
just,
my favorite. So
I mean, House on Haunted Hill is just, it feels like such a simple premise, yet it's done so well, and it's just a lot of fun. You know, everything from like, you know, the Vincent Price at the end of the movie with like the dancing skeleton, like scaring the lady into the
yes.
acid pit, or the
Oh my
or
gosh.
like the the scene
Yeah.
with the blind lady.
Oh my gosh. He's he's phenomenal. He could do camp like no other. He could do horror like no other. He could blend, which I think is why um I think you picked the more campy slash serious one, and then there's House of Wax, which is serious, and then you have the Tingler, which is just ridiculous, and then you have the House on Haunted Hill, which is the combination of both. So you picked the right one. I just
It's actually been a.
oh sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna go into my like hour-long tangent about the House of Wax.
I was just gonna say it's been a really long time since I've watched the Tingler, but I need to. It's definitely due for a rewatch, I think.
Yeah. Um the the Mads are back, like the Mads from MST3K did re-riffed it, and they had Victoria Price on as a guest, and her Q&A about her dad is so beautiful. So if you ever want like a riff over it and then a really good Q&A, I would recommend that way to watch it. I got all
Okay.
sorts of ways for you to watch films now.
Oh, what else were you gonna say about House of Wax?
Oh, just that um I love wax museums like a lot. And there's something they've remade the House of Wax, I feel, so many times. There have been so many different versions of it. But Vincent Price made me cry so hard during that movie. And if I think about the one scene that if you've seen the movie, then you know what I'm talking about. Or like as a person that makes art and does art and just the heartbroken way that he delivers some lines and him being an artist himself, you just feel it. You feel it in like your core. You're like, oh my gosh, like I felt like he could do very serious horror, and he also, was a very colorful actor and humanitarian and all these other things. But I felt like House of Wax was his branch into horror in a way from drama, and he just encompassed it so beautifully. Like that movie breaks my heart when I think about it. So I could go on for days about House of Wax.
While we're talking about Vincent Price, I would just like to show off my Vincent Price shirt I'm wearing.
Perfect. Oh my gosh. I love it. That is beautiful. Now I'm jealous. Where'd you get it?
I don't know.
No.
All I can all I can remember is that I bought it online. I've had it for a while now, but if you just type in Vincent Price shirt, it might show up.
Maybe.
I'll see if I can find it for you.
Thank you. Google image search it.
Yes.
There's so
uh,
few good Vincent Price shirts out there, so there's a ton, but there's so few good ones.
hmm And uh, let's talk a little bit about the 1960s now. What have you got for the 60s?
I have a few. Um, I have The Horror at Party Beach, Last Man on Earth, Manos: The Hands of Fate. I am not leaving that one out. Munster Go Home, V, and Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, okay. I've only seen two of those. I've seen Night of the Living Dead and uh, the Last Man on Earth,
Yeah.
but I'm not too familiar with the others. You want to tell us a little bit about those?
Okay. Horror Party Beach. I saw it on MST3K, on Mystery Science Theater 3000. Um, and it just has this ridiculous monster that comes out and terrorizes kids at a beach, and that's basically the premise of it. Like, if you want just like a schlocky little fun movie, I'm pretty sure it's free almost everywhere. That's fun. Manos: The Hands of Fate. This was made famous by Mystery Science Theater, and it has cult status for being the worst movie ever made, and uh, that always hurts me because it's really not. It's it's cheesy. The guy made it with like no budget. There's a lot of like tragedy involved in it, but it's basically about a family driving and their car breaks down, and then they're pulled into this house to stay by a satyr, I think is what he's supposed to be, and he like has a master there, and it's just goofy fun. And then um Munster Go Home is just one of the many Munster movies. V is really important, I think, for horror because it's a Nikolai Gogol short story, like story turned into a movie. It basically inspired Black Sunday, the other horror movie, and it's about a guy that accidentally murders a witch and then she haunts him, and it's so pretty. It's subtitled, it's all in Russian, but um it's really good in my opinion. And then what did I say? Oh, Night of the Living Dead, which you know. So
Yeah, I think everyone's familiar with Night of the Living Dead.
yeah, I'd hope so. It's actually propping up my phone right now, so
Oh, Turbo, a quick apology here. I accidentally forgot. I got so caught up in the Vincent Price discussion that I forgot one of my other movies from the 50s. So I'm just going to rewind a little bit here.
no, please do.
Uh, so the other one I had was The Abominable Snowman of the Himalayas. That's just
Sounds
a
familiar.
great. It's I think it was Hammer's first movie,
Mm-hmm.
um, or at least their first horror movie. It's starring Peter Cushing. Um,
Oh,
it's just a really great movie, and uh, I always say I like to think that if the abominable snowman is real, or Bigfoot or Yeti, whatever you want to call
yeah,
him,
yeah.
I feel like this would be a good representation of him, or at least
Oh,
that's how I imagine he is. So yeah, I'd highly recommend that one. Very cool movie, and yeah,
yeah.
just check it out if you have a chance.
I th- I think I have it on one of my horror packs, or maybe under a different name because it sounds familiar, but I cannot remember watching it. So thank you. I'm excited.
Okay, yeah,
I
good,
love
good. That's
cryptids.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. And all right, so on to the 60s. For my list, I've got another Vincent Price movie. I have The Haunted Palace, and
Oh,
it's actually been a really long time since I've seen that one, but I remember enjoying it quite a bit.
right.
Um, and then I've got another Hammer movie, Curse of the Werewolf,
Hmm.
which it makes me sad that Hammer only made one werewolf movie because they did such a good job with this one.
Yeah.
But
No, that's always
so yeah,
disappointing, isn't it? Whenever, and like it's so long ago, you can't go back and be like, why didn't you make this? Make another one. Like you can today.
yeah.
Ugh.
And I don't terrible. I don't know if you feel the same way, but so we just moved from the 50s to the 60s, and we're going from black and white to color. And those black and white movies, they just have like such a nostalgia factor for me. And it's like if it's black and white, chances are I'm going to enjoy it. You know?
Right, right. I mean, the depth of color, and I feel like you'd think it would make them easier to restore in a way because you don't need to worry about color correction and stuff. And um, there's something delightful about old film grain too, and I feel like you can see that more in black and white. You can see like I don't know. There's something scary about black and white that sometimes color just can't convey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely agree with that. So moving on to the 1970s. What's on your list for the 70s?
Okay. I have the Velvet Vampire, um, whoever slew Auntie Rue, um, which somehow made it in here, but I love it. Um, Home for the Holidays, Terror in the Wax Museum. There's so many, I'm sorry. Jaws, Carrie, Drive-In Massacre, Squirm, Suspiria, Ruby, and Dawn of the Dead. It's a lot. The 70s were a great
Oh
time for
wow.
horror. It was too hard to like narrow it down for me. And I just cut two of them if you can
That,
believe it.
man, when I was making my list, I forgot all about Jaws, but I
Yeah.
would, I would definitely include Jaws in that.
I think
Um,
I think cuz it gets pushed into like the almost action drama area. You know how like some movies when they became so popularized and commercialized that it doesn't really feel like horror because it's just a shark, quote unquote, just a shark. Um, but yeah, I think it's horror, right?
I would consider it horror, yeah,
Yeah. Okay, good.
and also maybe because like Jaws is it's gotten like so mainstream.
Right.
It's like so popular that we don't often think of horror movies that way. If that
Right.
makes sense.
No, absolutely. You actually worded something that I was going to get into if need be because it's hard when something becomes so popularized and so normalized, and that's what happens later on in horror. And it's like, what are you? Are you horror? Are you? And Jaws definitely, I think,
Yeah,
was a turning point.
and on that same note, I I could have included Godzilla in my 50s decades because some people consider that a horror movie,
Oh
and
yeah,
because it deals a lot with like the horrors of like World War II and nuclear
right.
radiation.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Oh
Especially if
yeah.
you're watching the Japanese version. But
Yes.
yeah, I would if we're including Godzilla as horror, then that's definitely on my list too.
Oh yeah, for
Um,
sure. I think it gets lumped into sci-fi for whatever reason because they're like, "Oh, but it's a reptile, and reptiles are sci-fi," and you're like, "What? When did reptiles become sci-fi? They
yeah,
exist.
but
They're real."
I wouldn't include any of the sequels as horror, but those are just like the giant monster battles and stuff, and it got away from like the
Yeah,
message of the original. But the original is a really great movie.
I agree. I had that on I got that at the dollar store as a kid on like VHS tape. I got it and it was so neat. I got King Kong too, I think. I think those were the two that I got as a kid and I was like, "What?
Ooh,
What is this?" Just got
King Kong,
nostalgic.
that's such a great movie too. Yeah.
Yeah.
uh, so on my 70s list, I have a movie that uh, my listeners are probably tired of hearing me talk about, but uh, Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires. Love that movie. The collaboration between Hammer and Shaw. Just it's so fun. Have
You know
you
what's
watched it,
terrible?
Turbo?
And you know what? That's what's terrible is I think I keep writing it down or keep like thinking I'm gonna watch this because you hype it up all the time, and here I sit, and here I sit. No, I vaguely
It's
might have
okay.
seen it back in the day, but one of my since I'm discount horror show and I like to get movies for discount, that's one of the things that drives me insane about Hammer and Universal Monsters is how expensive it is to own any of them. It's so ridiculous because at this point they're printing money. Like they don't need to charge as much as they are for something that's been around for so long. I don't even think the families that made the movies are getting money anymore. It's just the corporations. So you're like, why do you want like $75 for a DVD set? Not even Blu-ray. Then you get into 4K. Sorry, tangent.
There's actually I know there's a sale going on right now at Shout Factory, um, and they have a lot of Hammer movies on there too.
Thank
That's
you.
a yeah. I think it's going on till like the 17th or something.
Yeah,
But
that's
yeah, uh,
thank you.
definitely definitely get a lot of good movies over there, and
Yeah.
they usually do a pretty good job with them too, like as far as like extra features go and stuff like that.
That is true. I do need to consider that. Sometimes they do add more stuff. Sometimes they do old interviews or new commentaries. So
Yeah. And then my other movie on the 70s is my it's probably my all-time favorite zombie movie, Tombs of the Blind Dead. Uh, have you watched that one?
no.
Yeah, so this
Now
is a
now we're gonna
Spanish
have to.
horror movie.
Ooh,
Yeah, and I really got to stress here that if you're gonna watch this, you want to watch the original version and not
okay.
the English cut,
Yeah.
because the English version, it's like they butcher it so horribly. It's like I don't know how you can mess up a movie that badly, but somehow they managed to do it. So, if possible, you want to try and get the original language version. Just really creepy. It's blind zombies that have swords and ride horses. It's just like so cool.
Wait, that sounds familiar. Maybe I have seen the botched version. Did it was it released under a different name? Do you know?
Um,
That's okay. That's okay. I'll look it
I
up.
can't remember,
Because I
but
know
I
that
know
happened a lot.
and there are four movies in the series too. I haven't seen any of the sequels though,
They're not Santo, are
but
they?
no,
Okay, okay, okay. Making sure.
no, not Santo.
I love Santo. Leave Santo alone.
Yeah, I've caught a little bit of some Santo movies where he's like fighting the different monsters, and
Yeah, you're a
those are
wrestling
fun.
fan. Why don't you like Santo?
No, I do like Santo.
This is a crime.
And if I'm remembering correctly, I think Santo was an actual wrestler too.
Mhm. From what
He's
I
just that
remember,
just started making movies. Yeah, uh,
I
yeah.
I
So
think
those are fun.
I think if you've seen, have you seen The Strain, the like horror series, The Strain? Oh, I think they
No.
based. There was a comic. There's a graphic novel first. I think they based. I think. I read it, but I think they based Angel from that off of him. He was a cool character, but anyway, that movie sounds good. And now I have like just that scene alone of blind zombies charging. I'm all about representation of disabled anything in any horror in any movie, but that sounds visually
Well,
stunning.
see, I wouldn't exactly use the word charging to describe it because it's funny because like when they're riding the horses, like the camera is like in slow motion.
Ooh, that sounds perfect. Thank you. I'm so excited now.
It's pretty cool. I would check it out. I'll give a trigger warning for that. There's a scene of a sexual assault in there.
Okay.
So just a heads up for that.
Thank you.
Uh, the zombies, it's like unlike anything that you've ever seen in a zombie movie. It's just like really cool.
Yeah.
They used to be like I think Knights Templars, and then they were murdered, and
This keeps sounding more and more familiar.
you probably saw it a long time ago.
Yeah, that's what it feels like cuz I'm like why does this make sense to me? But yeah.
uh, and terrible. We're gonna get into one of my favorite decades for horror, and that's the '80s.
Yeah,
What have you got for the 80s?
too many. You go. You should go first because I have too many, and I'm gonna be
Okay, that's
embarrassed.
fair. All right. So I'll start with my all-time favorite horror movie, John Carpenter's The Thing.
Okay.
Just such a great movie. Just the atmosphere and just the special effects. It has great
Mhm.
effects in it. Uh, Such a great movie. And then I've also got Friday the 13th Part 2, which I think this was a lot better than the first movie. And it's also the first movie that has Jason in it. Uh,
Mm.
this
Oh yeah.
the and I mean he doesn't have the hockey mask yet. He just has the sack on his head. But this I remember watching this when I was younger, and that ending really got me. I don't know if you remember it, where the final girl is in the house with her boyfriend, and like there's a noise at the door, and the boyfriend goes to check, and it's like a dog randomly shows up or something. They're like, "Oh, everything's okay," but we have like this. The final shot is like this wide camera angle, which if you watch it a second time, you can see it coming, but watching it like as a kid for the first time, you have no
Yeah.
idea. Like the wide shot where like the girl is sitting there, she's like, "Oh," and then like Jason bursts through the window behind her and grabs her.
That's
That's
right.
like, oh, and then
That's
she
right.
like, yeah, and then like she wakes up after that, like, and the paramedics are there, but her boyfriend is gone. So like we're left wondering what happened. And but it's I thought it was just pretty cool. And then
Yeah.
the last movie I have is uh possibly my favorite werewolf movie, Silver Bullet, Stephen King adaptation. Uh,
Huh.
it's Never seen Silver Bullet?
I don't think so. I don't think
The
so.
that's the one with the kid in the wheelchair. Gary
Oh,
Busey's in
maybe.
it.
How did I erase that from my thoughts? Because I'm
Yeah,
like, if there's like any sort of disability representation in the movie, I'm typically seated. Wow. Hey, thank you. This is why it's good. This is why
yeah,
it's
that's
good that we
that's
have
that
our.
movie's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah,
I mean, like you
yeah,
said, Stephen King, and
absolutely.
I'm basically sold.
Yeah, based off his novella Cycle of the Werewolf. Um, yeah, definitely highly recommend that one. It's a lot of fun. Uh, what have you got for the '80s, Turbo?
um,
No, you're
Mountaintop
fine.
Motel Massacre. Um, this one, it's fun. It's like a good movie, but the soundtrack. You ever watch a horror movie and you're just like, that soundtrack. All right, I'm good. It's one of those. Of course, Gremlins was there. Day of the Dead, Chopping Mall, um, Troll, Child's Play, Elvira Misses the Dark, Hobgoblins, Puppet Master, Nightmare Weekend. My mom's a werewolf, so I had a werewolf one too, and Pod People. Some of these are a little more like horror comedy, like that fine line. So yeah, 80s were great. 80s were great for horror. And
Yeah,
franchising, really for franchising.
yeah. I had a feeling you might have an Elvira movie on your list based on your background. There, you have all those Elvira comics in the back.
Yes, yes. If you ever want a really good series, Dave Avalon's run of Elvira is so good. You'd think this man is 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 Cassandra Peterson sometimes, and she approves everything, so it's amazing.
Okay,
I'm very
I
I'm
guess I didn't
very
even realize there were Elvira comics, but I should have figured.
oh there's a ton. Yeah, there were back in the I think 80s and 90s, and then he started to do a run too, and it's so good.
We'll have to look into that. And Turbo Turbo also has a very awesome Elvira cosplay that she did. Uh, so that's very cool.
Thank you.
Um, well, yeah, the '80s had so much great stuff in the '80s, and it's just like the whole vibe of like movies made in that decade. It's just I don't know how to describe it. It's just really cool.
Yeah, I feel like it started to get a little more accepted. And so a lot more of bigger companies were taking the risk on a lot of horror genre ideas and just went with it. The fact that we got all of those in the 80s is insane. Um, so yeah, I'm honestly impressed.
Yeah. All right, let's take a look at the 90s. Do you want to go
Mhm.
first? Do you want me to go first?
You go first. I got too
Okay.
many again.
Okay. Yeah, the 90s again, a lot of good horror coming out of the 90s. Um,
Mhm.
one of my favorites, Dracula Dead and Loving It, a horror
Oh my
comedy.
gosh.
I just Les Leslie Nielsen is amazing, and that movie is it's, it's just like every every actor in that movie is just like plays their part so well, and it's it's so much fun. I
Nice.
actually I loaned that out to a friend one time, and she was like, "Oh, I couldn't get past like the first 10 minutes or so. She hated it." It's like, "Oh no!" It's like I just felt
Uh,
like shattered on the inside. It's like, "Oh my gosh, how could anyone hate this movie?"
I think that's,
It made me sad, but
oh man, oh man, and like the thing is, if somebody ever lends you a movie, they're lending you a piece of themselves. Don't say you hate it. Just say it wasn't for me. And that's fine. But man, to give somebody a piece of yourself and then they reject it so brutally. I'm so sorry.
I mean, I I I don't remember if she actually said she hated it. I just know she didn't enjoy watching it, and she said that she couldn't get past the beginning. But still,
Ugh,
I love
man.
that movie though. Um, I've also got another movie that I guess would be classified as a horror comedy, and that's Tremors. Uh,
Oh yeah.
Tremors, the giant underground worms. That's with Kevin Bacon.
Libs.
That's a really cool movie. Um, I remember watching that younger, and there's
The
one
things Kevin
scene in
Bacon ended
particular
up
that really
in.
creeped me out. Do you remember the scene where I think it's just a guy and his girlfriend, or I don't know if they're a married couple, but it's at night and they're sitting in a car, and like the guy goes outside, and the monster gets him, and then she's alone in the car, and you think the scene's going to end there, but then it pulls the car underground, and that just, oh, that was so freaky when I was watching it
Oh
when I was
wait.
younger. But
I
you
think
remember that?
you're gonna despise this. I do slightly, but I think the only times I've ever watched Tremors or any of its sequels were on like sci-fi back in the day, I want to say. So like the made for TV
Oh, okay.
edits. Yeah. So I was like recalling and I'm like that sounds so familiar. That's me half the time though. It could be one of my favorite movies and I'll be like, I think so.
And actually, I guess all three of the movies I have for the 90s could be considered horror comedy, because my last one is Wes Craven's The People Under the Stairs. Um,
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
that one's yeah, that's a lot of fun. Has some really goofy moments in it too, but it's
Yeah.
that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it has some.
What you
Yeah,
got,
it's not
Turtle?
as goofy, definitely, as the other two. For the 90s, I'm so sorry. I have both of the Chucky movies,
You're
like
fine.
2 and 3 that came out. Um, this is definitely not my favorite horror movie. This is a movie that just traumatized me, and it was Fear. Um, that one has like stuff with animals, has abusive boyfriends, stalking, all that stuff. I watched that on television, and I was never the same. Um, I didn't swear, did I? I feel like I swore. Um,
Oh,
and
you're
then
fine.
Troll 2. Okay. And then Troll 2, which is supposed to be a sequel of Troll, but it isn't. That is just a goofy movie. So I have some goofies in here. I have Puppet Master 2, Silence of the Lambs, um, Interview with the Vampire, Ice Cream Man, Bride of Chucky. I feel like they captured the essence of Bride of Frankenstein with Jennifer Tilly so well. Sorry. Um, Audition, Idle Hands, The Sixth Sense, of course, and Werewolf. I can't leave The Sixth
No,
Sense
okay.
out. I
You got
refuse.
quite a few there.
Yeah, I do.
Fear, I think I saw part of that on TV. That's the one with Mark Wahlberg where he's like
hmm
a stalker boyfriend.
hmm Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're traumatized, don't watch it. It's the worst. I'd like a lot of people say,
No,
"Oh,
I was
most of that
always
stuff's so."
curious.
I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say I was always curious about the rest of it. I want to check the rest of it out someday because I only saw half the movie.
No, there's a
No.
dog scene in that movie that everyone says looks super fake, and to me, every single time, I can't erase that image. It's like stuck there. Every time somebody mentions stuff happening to dogs in movies, I immediately think of that. Ugh.
I think that might have actually been part of the half that I watched. Um,
Oh, it's the worst.
but yeah,
It's the worst.
at least at this point, if I watch it again, I know about where it is, so I could just fast forward it if I need to.
I would absolutely say the minute you see that dog walking outside, just skip it. Just go. Don't look back.
Okay.
You cannot show me a dog being happy
Uh,
and then horrible things. I can't. Mm-mm.
yeah, it's always tough to watch. Uh, so
Right.
Turbo, this wasn't on my list. It wasn't on your list, but I know it's a really popular movie from the '90s. What did you think
Mm.
of the movie Scream?
Mm. It's good.
Okay, I've actually never watched it.
Yeah, I think I've watched most of them on television. I have so many people that love them. And um the 90s were when I started to become a little bit of a horror snob. So I always thought that those movies were making fun of horror and not in like the fun way. So I got a really bad oh, what's it called? Impression of them. And didn't give it a proper chance. Because like I've seen it sort of since then, and I know how beloved it is. And it has a lot of amazing actors and cast, and I should, at the core of me, love it. And I think I need to give it another chance. So maybe maybe we need to maybe we need to give it another chance.
Yeah, that's actually kind of like why I never even watched it in the first place. I kind of felt the same way that you did, and
hmm
plus horror. I don't know, like horror to me always felt like I don't. Okay, I don't know how to describe this, but so like when Scream came out, like it was kind of popular, right? Like a lot of people were
Right.
talking about it. Like I remember a lot of
hmm
kids in school talking about it, and that kind of like turned me off from it a little bit.
Right. No,
Um,
I think we have the same wavelength here on this. Where you don't want to sound like a snob and or like, oh, I'm too above that, but it was weird when you tried to get people to watch other horror movies and then suddenly they're all obsessed with a certain new horror movie and it's confusing.
yeah, yeah, and plus Scream was kind of like the first. I don't know what you want to call it, the first somewhat modern feeling horror movie.
Mhm.
Like like we talked about how like the '80s had that certain vibe to it,
Yeah.
and Scream comes along and like I don't know, just had like a different feel to it just from like watching the previews, and it just kind of turned me off from it. But one of these days, I do plan on
Yeah.
watching it, and actually like uh, not that long ago, I was at the store and I found it was at like Walmart's $5 like DVD bin that they have. They had like the
Yes.
first three Scream movies on DVD, so I picked that up. I just haven't watched it yet, but
That's a
one
good
of these days
price.
I definitely should check it out. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you own them now, so I mean, they're there. They're just waiting. They're like, "Hello."
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I understand that though, because I for the longest time I'd get them mixed up with Scary Movie, because that's how it kind of felt. Like it was like supposed to be like scary movie because it felt the way they did the commercials for it too felt very parody, like a horror parody. Um, I feel like its promotion was really handled bizarre. And that could have been what draw like pulled in the other crowd, and then they turned out to be a horror movie, which was like news to me back before IMDb was a big thing. So you couldn't
Right,
like go and
right.
like look and source it. And this is coming from the
Yeah.
person that loves like the Chucky movies, which people could be like, "Oh, that's this or that," but it's like, no, I feel like Chucky's self-aware. So I don't know. I haven't given Scream a proper chance, so or proper go. So
Well, one of these we'll check it out and we'll share notes and see what we think.
yeah.
But I'm glad that you mentioned the scary movies because those are fun movies. And did the first one come out in the 90s or was that in the 2000s?
I I don't know because
I can't remember.
it spawned such a chain reaction in filmmaking that just bleh, upset me. Not in like a oh these movies shouldn't exist way. No, no, no. Every movie deserves to exist. In a what happened? What happened to Hollywood?
Well, let's go into the 2000s then. Um,
Right.
you want to share your list for the 2000s?
All right, I guess I'll go first. The 2000s were interesting because we got so many franchises starting. Like we had three Final Destinations in the course of 10 years. And whether people like Final Destination or not, I personally love them. They've instilled such paranoia and fear in people um, to the point of it becoming almost a meme at this point. And it's got Devon Sawa, so he's fun. Then of course Elvira's Haunted Hills came out. My favorite version of Carrie, which is with Angela Bettis. It's the Brian Fuller version, made for TV. That is my favorite Carrie. And another Angela Bettis was May, which is like probably one of my absolute favorite horror movies. The remake of Willard, A Tale of Two Sisters, Seed of Chucky, Joshua Goth, Saw, for the loved ones in the village. I have a lot because it was a good time for big studios and a good time for indie. So because I touched on quite a few indies in there
Okay, I was gonna
and
say most
Japanese.
of those I haven't even heard of.
Yeah, there's some indies and then there's some Japanese. So
Okay,
or
very
Korean too. I
cool.
think. Thank you. Name's Korean. Sorry,
So, oh, that's
it's been
okay.
a while. Because I went through like a Korean and Japanese horror binge back in the day, and but yeah, sorry.
Oh, you're fine. Do you have a favorite Japanese horror movie?
No, I could not if I wanted to. I love like if I would put them on a pedestal and I'd have to fight it out. I'd have to think about it for a while. Not in a mean way. I just have to think it
Right.
over. Do
Okay.
you?
Um,
It's okay if you don't.
I can't really. No, I can't really think of any Japanese horror movies right now, other than
It's
Godzilla, I guess.
no, we can no, we'll go with that. We'll go with Godzilla being number one.
Yeah.
Godzilla
Yeah.
top. It took over.
I there was one Japanese horror movie I watched probably around this time period, like sometime in the mid 2000s,
Mhm.
and it was like the grossest movie I ever saw. It was called Machine Girl. Does that ring a
Oh
bell at
yeah,
all?
yeah, yeah. That does ring a bell, yeah.
Ah, that was just like so disgusting. I wouldn't recommend anyone go see it.
See, I'm the one that can deal with the very graphic, gruesome mutilations on screen, but the minute you give any violence to like women beyond just normal horror violence, then I'm like, no,
Right.
that isn't my movie. But you give me like arms, eyes, tongues, noses being, I'm there. I'm seated. I am watching the artistry, and I'm like, how did you do that?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm not too much into the gore. Like the thing that's probably my limit for gore. um, oh yeah. I do have to admit though, it's amazing what they do with like practical effects, and
Oh yeah,
it's it's like
I agree.
it's very cool. But and that, actually, as we get into the 2000s and the most recent decades, I haven't watched a whole lot of newer horror movies. So
Okay.
my next few lists are pretty small. But for the 2000s, I've got a movie that's, I think, very divisive among the fan base, and that is
Ooh.
Jason X, otherwise known as
Hmm.
Jason in Space.
Oh my gosh. I mean, let
Uh,
him have fun.
yeah, and the thing about Jason X is like I think it's the first movie in the franchise where it's not taking itself too seriously, and it's like it's
Right.
comfortable making fun of itself.
Right.
Because you got like a lot of little jokes in there, and it's just a lot of fun. Like you got the one guy in there that's like being cornered by Jason, and he's like, "Oh, come on, guys, it's okay. He just wanted his machete back," and then Jason hacks him down. So there's like
It's
so many little
yeah.
fun things in there.
That's what,
And
see,
then
I'm divisive with my Chucky too, because like I feel you on that, because like Chucky's one of my favorite franchises, and Bride and Seed and all them are so divisive. And it's like, but it's fun. It was serious for long enough, and it's a doll, and it's a dude in a hockey mask. What are you expecting?
right.
It would just be the same thing again and again. I'm glad that with Jason they took like risks. I'm glad you admitted that. Good for you.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
And
No, I'm
then I've got another very cool, in my opinion, werewolf movie on my list. I've got Dog
ooh.
Soldiers.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
it's the soldiers in the Scottish Highlands and the werewolves. Um, the the werewolf design in that one was like top notch too. Those are
Hmm.
really creepy, scary looking werewolves.
I'm trying to
Have
think
you
of who
seen that
did
one?
that. I feel like I own it. Well, I don't own it.
Oh,
It's
okay.
in my house. Um, and it's beloved in this house, so I should probably watch it. I think I've seen parts of it because horror makeup, and I'm trying really hard to remember who did it, but I can't bring the name to my mind, and I'm gonna be so upset when I realize it's like a Savini or a Venial, and I'm gonna be like, you, how could you forget that?
Well, on that note, do you have a favorite like horror special effects person?
Oh, that's tough. That's really tough. Oh, no, because they all have their highs and lows. Like um they've all done incredible work, and then they've also done stuff just to get money. Nicotero and V Nail are probably two of my favorites. I can't deny Nicotero just getting to do what he wants and having a blast with it. And getting to do some of and Savini, of course, and oh, Patrick something, what's your name? I used to have a favorite one. I used to love wasn't it Baker? Baker and V Neal, I think, did the Grinch's makeup for the Grinch with Jim Carrey, which I know it pained Jim Carrey, but that is still some of the best makeup art done. Like the way that it moved perfectly with his face. Man, he suffered for that movie physically, but it looks great and it's still treasured.
Yeah, and
Sorry if you get me starting about
I
horror
think
making. Sorry.
no, you're fine. And I think Rick Baker also did the special effects for
Mhm.
American Werewolf in London, which
Yes,
has a really cool
I think so.
werewolf transformation scene in it. So yeah, he's one of the names I think of, and you mentioned Tom Savini as well. He's another one.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, there's so many talented artists out there.
No. That's what I originally wanted to do actually for the longest time. So
I mean, you could start.
oh, thanks. No, I have too many I have too much pain and too many allergies, so and
Okay.
I missed my window back in the day, so it it's all right.
All right, because I know you've got a lot of awesome cosplays, so I know that you're a very creative person.
Thank you. Yeah, that's why half my stuff's done with like garbage and trash and stuff because it's stuff that I can use, stuff I can find, and it's fun. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, as I mentioned, I haven't seen a whole lot of newer horrors, so I just have one movie for our last 2 decades. So I'll go ahead and I'll do mine first.
Oh,
For the 2010s, I have
mhm.
The Cabin in the Woods.
Okay.
Uh, I thought that was a fun movie. It did some unique things with the horror genre at least unique to me that I hadn't seen before.
Okay.
Um, it's a lot of fun. What have you got for the 2010s?
Um, I just did I have American Mary, Curse of Chucky, Creep, What We Do in the Shadows, Cult of Chucky. I did like the new It. I thought that was pretty great. Tragedy Girl, Summer of '84, and Demon Squad. But
Okay.
yeah, I think if I had to
I
narrow
don't.
it down. Oh, sorry.
I was just saying. I don't think I've seen most of those.
Ooh. Well, they're really good. American
Hmm.
Mary's gory, so I don't think I'd recommend that one too much to you. Creep's creepy. Um, Summer of '84 will leave you incredibly unsettled. Um, that's by the directors that directed Turbo Kid, which is one of my favorite movies and where I get half of my names from. Uh, they directed Summer of '84, and it's about like kids um, in the summer of '84, and they think their neighbor is a creepo. And it's the soundtrack is it's using like Manos again from Turbo Kid, and they have like that very '80s electro chip tune kind of music. So they just bring it so much for that movie. I had to buy it. I have it digitally and physically, which is like unheard of for me.
Oh, I Summer of '84. I've seen that. I always thought. Wait, you're telling me that was made in the 2010s? I always thought that was an '80s movie.
No, that might
Or
be
did they just make it to look like an '80s movie?
is it the one with the kids and they're like and it's the guy from Mad Men?
Uh, I don't know who the actor is, but like the kids think the neighbor's a serial killer and he's like a police officer.
Yeah, this one
Yeah.
at all? That's the one?
Okay. I didn't realize that was such a newer movie.
Yeah. That's newer. Yeah. Did you like it?
Okay.
You didn't like it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, I did like it. It was because yeah, I guess that makes sense. If you're gonna make a movie called The Summer of '84, you'd want to make it look like it was from the '80s. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
No, they're
no, I yeah, I thought that was a pretty cool movie, and like it catches you off guard too, because like for like the
Mhm.
entire movie, there's like almost no violence in it, and then you get to towards the end, and that one scene, and it's like it
that
catches you off
scene
guard.
that scene alone, like people be like, "Oh, it's so slow," or "Oh, this not," and like you worded it very politely, thank you, because it. There's like no violence, there's like no gore. You believe that you're just watching some kids just having fun over the summer, thinking their neighbor's a creep, but he's not. And then that end scene with the music and the lighting and the violence, I was sitting there, chills. I'm thinking about it, and I have chills because if any one little part of that filming went off during that scene, it would not have had that. Like your tummy felt like it was going to like suction itself to your spine level of like, yeah, highly recommend. And you're supporting an indie creator when you watch it, so
Yeah, Man, I don't know. Yeah, it's just crazy. Like the whole movie, it feels like a kid's coming of age movie or something, and then that
Hmm.
happened. It's just like,
Right? Because you're like, no, 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 they're just kids. Come on. Yeah, I had to
and it's
own
like,
that. I
and yeah, no, that was a very good movie, and yeah, just like towards the end, like when we're like the kid, like he finally convinces like the the rest of the police that, oh, this guy is actually the killer, and they realize that he is the killer, and like they go after him. Like it acts like the movie acts like that's it, that's the end. They found out who the bad guy
right.
is, and they're gonna nail him now, and like, okay, end of story. But then it
Hmm.
keeps going on. You're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And then,
Yeah.
as we said, that happens. And it's like, oh,
It's
oh,
it's very realistic though. It is because like, like
yeah,
I feel like a lot of horror movies will have the cops essentially believing them, but in this one they just didn't. And it's very realistic in a lot of ways, which is I think why I had like such like a tummy reaction where my tummy was like, I don't like this.
yeah, oh, yeah.
The soundtrack alone. I'm so excited that you've seen that. Thank you. I
Yeah,
act
but
as though I've made it.
I
I
definitely,
made this film.
I do need to rewatch it though, because I was probably watching it with the volume turned down,
Yeah,
so I don't wake the kid up. So I probably didn't
right.
get the full effect of like the soundtrack and everything. So I definitely need to rewatch that. But
Please
yeah,
do. It's so
I'm
good.
glad you mentioned it.
Thank you. I am too. I
Yeah.
was like, because I couldn't put Turbo Kid on it because that's not considered a horror, and it's so gory. You're like, well, maybe it is, but I guess not. I guess post-apocalyptic films don't count, but do. Who knows? What
Uh,
is a genre anyway?
right.
Right.
That brings us to our final decade, the 2020s.
Okay.
And I've got one movie on here, and if I'm making a list of my all-time favorite horror movies, this movie would not be on there, but it's on my list by default just because I haven't seen very many horror movies lately. And
Oh
this is also another one that's very divisive among the fan base, and that would be
no.
Halloween Kills.
Oh. Oh.
Um,
Yeah. Yep. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you had to put that there. I feel so bad for you right now.
okay,
I'm
look,
gonna give you movies so that we can rectify this.
I mean, there there's parts about this movie that I don't like, but there's parts that I thought were very interesting and unique.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hmm.
like for example, okay, so I can tell that you're not a fan of the movie, but for example, you can't tell me that the scene with the firefighters wasn't cool at all.
No, no, there were a lot of cool scenes. I'm just gonna
Yeah,
quickly say my biggest problem with it, and you mentioned this, I think, too, and so did Tina. You mentioned that um, Judy Greer's character, what happened to her in the previous film, was quick and ridiculous. And honestly, I feel like something happened with either Judy Greer's contract or something because she was given the respect of nothing in her final scene in Halloween. Nothing. She was just thrown aside after all of her trauma and everything she went through. The way she was treated just like hurt me at a level I can't explain. And then when you go into the second movie, you feel like she needed to be there for that finale. Like it felt like the daughter was supposed to be the one that was murdered, and then it was supposed to be mother daughter team up, not grandmother granddaughter. It felt
right.
really weird and really their plot line felt bizarrely written to me. It felt last minute and rushed because just like Judy's death felt bizarre and rushed. I can't remember her character's name, so I apologize.
No,
It's
that's
the
fine.
mom.
Yeah, yeah. That
So
I didn't care
that's
for that, and yeah,
I
but
don't
like I thought. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. It's me just like rambling. I don't do well with a character that's been traumatized as hard as Lori has, being treated kind of crappy. And then her daughter finally was understanding her, and then she was just like murdered after her whole life of living in trauma too, from her mom's trauma, like generational trauma, and the daughter's not really dealing with any of that. It felt like they completely dismissed the daughter probably experiencing some trauma, and I just couldn't read that into the movie. The actress is great. I'm not giving her anything, and I apologize to the scriptwriters because I
Right.
don't like being that mean. But everything else, the kills, everything else in that movie was really good. I just could not stop feeling like they just offed a trauma victim for like no reason needlessly in the other film, and then they never really talked about her much, which can happen, but it just felt so needless. It felt so empty, and I don't know, like because like again, I liked a lot of parts of it. I did, and I was very happy to see Laurie back. I love bringing Jamie Lee Curtis back, but I was like, you brought her back to do this? What? Hurt my
Yeah.
feelings.
And I thought it was kind of cool how they also brought back some of the like secondary characters from the first movie and included them.
Oh, you're
So I
right. You're
thought that
right.
was kind of a cool touch. Um,
Yeah.
I wasn't too crazy about um, the angry the angry village mob thing with the evil dies tonight, and like they somehow mistake this mental patient that looks nothing like Michael
Hmm.
as like the killer, and they go after him. That just felt kind of weird to me.
That's another thing I forgot. That's another thing is the way they treated psychiatric wards and things like that in that movie. It's like we're in the 2020s now. I thought we could at least be a little bit gentler. I know it's horror, but I've seen older horror films that treated that kind of stuff so much better. So it felt very slapped together, and I feel bad for the writers because they probably have done better and can do better, and I feel like it felt like somebody, a producer or somebody up top, just kept making changes to their script, and they had to keep dialing it back, and they're like, oh, you know what's scary? Mental illness. And you're like, yeah, but not really.
Right.
Simplifying it.
Yeah. So Turbo, how about you give me some good movie recommendations for the 20s?
Okay. Nope. Knock at the Cabin. I know that's divisive. Wrath of Becky's really good. I know it deals with a dog, but spoiler alert, the dog is relatively fine. There's like a little bit of dog peril, but otherwise, like it's so good. The actress is so awesome. And then I wrote Annabelle, and I meant Abigail, that new vampire movie with the little girl in it, little
Okay.
ballerina girl that just came out. That is so good. I mean, like I love ballet movies for whatever reason. I don't know why. I blame the red shoes. Um, but creepy little ballet vampire, and then it has some of my favorite actors and actresses in it. Yes, please. And it was done well. The kills were beautiful. Trauma. It's a good one. And
Okay.
somewhere in here I missed like a few. Uh I missed mentioning, I know you like Stephen King. This isn't from the 20s, but Rose Red, and then there was like an indie film called Butterfly Kisses, which is a found footage. So I didn't want to leave them out. I feel mean if I left
Okay.
them out.
Yeah. On my list of movies that I want to see, I definitely have Nope and A Knock at the Cabinet there.
Hmm.
Those looked interesting. I definitely want to check those out someday.
I I will disclaimer, I am an M. Night Shyamalan fan, so I'm a little biased. So you might not like it. I thought it was interesting. It's not like the best. The 20s are pretty hard because I feel like our horror pot is like a little bit empty. I feel like a lot of it went to either streaming or indies, and finding an indie on streaming is very hard.
Well, Turbo, we've covered all the decades. I'm
Right.
gonna I'll put you on the spot a little bit here and say, can you narrow down like your all-time favorite horror movie? or is,
Uh,
or is that going to make your head explode thinking about it?
a little bit. I can say a few of mine, for sure. As far as what they've, May is just my personal, that is my, that movie is so much to me on an emotional level. I know it has like a lot of like probably stuff that can be dated and stuff, but for me personally, that movie just means the world to me. And as a young person that watched it, it was like my, it meant so much to me. The Chucky films, of course. Uh, The Sixth Sense for sure, just because I think it really helped change what horror can be, and and I think that's interesting. Everything that M. Night Shyamalan's done, whether people like him or not, he very much has given so much to the film industry, in my opinion. And let's see, I know I have a few more. Definitely House of Wax, the Vincent Price one, not the new one. Sorry,
Okay.
new one.
Oh, I haven't seen the new one.
Yeah, with like
Is it
it's
no good?
new one with Paris Hilton, so it's from like what was that 2000? You know, when they were just making things just to
Yeah,
make them.
yeah. I remember
They
when
were
it
like,
came out.
here,
I just never got around to seeing it.
I own the soundtrack for it. I can say that. I got it at the dollar store. I was like, well, how can I pass you up? What about you? Or do you have any follow-ups for not follow any thoughts on those?
um, I don't know. I just I probably stick with the Thing as my all-time favorite. That's
That's
definitely at the
interesting.
top of my list. Yeah, it's just I would recommend that movie to anyone. Just it's like so well done. Kurt Russell's great in it. Uh, Also Keith David, Wilford Brimley, and it's a lot of fun. Just like the claustrophobic feeling of them trapped in
Ugh.
Antarctica. There's no escape because if they go stay outside too long, they'll freeze to death, and they're
Maybe
trapped
that's
with
why.
this
Maybe that's
thing
why
that
I Sorry, I'm like thinking out loud.
no.
Maybe that's why I kind of blocked that movie from me because I don't do well with claustrophobia.
Okay,
I'm like,
yeah,
I never
and
really was claustrophobic. Sorry.
there is a scene in there with you're fine. There's a scene in there with the dogs that's a little scary, but I mean at the same time you can tell it's pretty fake too. So it's
Yeah.
I don't mind watching it, but yeah, just a great movie. And so Turbo, question for you.
Hmm.
We just talked about all these horror movies.
Right.
Movies, horror movies have all kinds of things happening in them, like people getting killed and mutilated and whatnot. So my question for you is, why do we like horror so much?
Oh wow. Oh no. Ooh. Uh. All right. Uh. For me personally, um, I don't know how to word this so it doesn't come off sounding odd. Um, I I often struggle with like depression, anxiety, and mental illness in various different forms. And sometimes, a lot of the time, actually, in horror, a lot more of different people are shown on screen and accepted, and they'll actually talk openly about mental illness or they'll talk about different things and there'll be trauma and other things. And sometimes it's handled well, sometimes it isn't. But it can be almost cathartic when you, and this sounds weird because it's horror, but it can be almost cathartic when you're like, when you see um, someone struggle and become the final girl and become like the hero or become, something bigger. And that could be definitely why that that Laurie hurt, like that Judy Greer's character getting off hurt me so bad is because, like, you know, a you always want better for like people that have gone through a lot, and so I think they don't make inspirational. As I say, you know, I like having a hero, but they don't necessarily. Whenever you see a movie about trauma or PTSD and stuff, and it's a drama, it's often worded from the caretaker's perspective or from, oh, but they overcame it. And at the end of a horror film, they're still traumatized. They got through torture in some scenarios. They got through awful things, and they still have problems, probably, I'd assume. Um, but like they get like that little blanket and they're in like their little ambulance and they're being comforted, and for that like split second you're like, oh. And I don't feel like we often get that. That's probably deeply personal.
No,
Sorry.
that's okay. That's a good answer. You're fine.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
and also I like special effects, so, and I like quirky stuff, so.
Right.
Right. So why do you like
Yeah.
horror?
I mean, I just think this horror is a lot of fun, and
Hmm.
um, it's fun to be scared as long as you know that like the danger is not
Yes.
real. Um, so that's also why people like going on stuff like roller coasters too and stuff. I think because it's
Yes.
scary, but you know that you're gonna be relatively safe most likely. And that's the same thing with horror movies. There's no real danger. Um, Although, I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, if I'm watching a horror movie, I'm not gonna be too keen to go for a walk in the woods by myself at night. You know what?
Right. Right, right, right.
And it's just a lot of fun. I like the horror movies that are scary, but also, um, I mean, like the older ones aren't really scary, but like the
Mm,
Wolfman, there's just something special about movies from back then that I
I
enjoy.
agree. There's
And
something
so yeah,
technical about them. Yeah. No, I was like, oh my gosh, we're on the same wavelength because you said that, like, you know, you like to be scared in the confines of your own parameters. And that's why I'm very big on trigger warnings. I forgot so many from on like this list because if I went through them all, it'd be really hard, but there are websites for that. With May, there is like animal stuff because she's a vet, well, assistant. And it's, sorry, I'd like blanking a little. It's, it's nice when you know your parameters and you're like, okay, I want to be scared by something other than my mind for the next hour and a half to 2 hours. I would like to have this chill out and sit back and watch a movie. It's like the MST3K. Just repeat to yourself. You know what I mean? It's a very big thing. Like, um, even in a lot of places that I was in when I was dealing with a lot of stuff, one of the things we watched a lot was horror movies. It's not because like anyone's violent or anything. It's definitely not that. It's just it's nice to not see normalized, oh, look, she's trying to meet Mr. Right in the city, you know, or, you know, like, oh no, spy detective, he's coming and he's mad. And, you know, it's a very interesting, it's one of the most diverse genres for sure, because you can have a horror comedy, romantic horror, comedy horror, action adventure horror. It's there's something there for everyone, really. And I think that that's a big thing is once you're in the horror community, a lot of it's inclusion and acceptance because you find your little groups of people that are all different. Like we can be very different, but we have this in common and books and stuff. But you know what I'm saying? It's interesting
yeah,
that, oh, the people you'll meet through horror.
yeah, absolutely, definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
So Turbo, this was a lot of fun going through our lists, and I would
Yeah.
encourage, I would encourage anyone who listens to this episode, if you're listening on YouTube or Spotify, leave a comment with your favorite horror movies and let us know. I'd like to see what everyone else is interested in. And Turbo, the channel is Discount Horror Show. of course, you also have a wonderful channel dedicated to Dragonlance. Uh,
Yay.
Turbo is the Bard of Kryn. You can find her at the Bard of Kryn YouTube channel, where she shares her singing with us. She sings various songs related to the Dragonlance novels, and I would highly recommend that.
Thank
And
you.
Turbo, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been great.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited we got to talk horror and we got to defend our favorites.
Yes, yes, and discover some new ones as well.
Right, yeah. I love hearing people's opinions on horror, so please. Yeah.
All
Thank
right,
you so much.
awesome. You're welcome. Thank you. And thanks everyone for joining us. If you'd like to learn more about my podcast, you can find me on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. Just search for A Happy Moment. And I will see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.